Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Small Talk with Amina. Today I have a very interesting guest list. Dr. Zishan, who's a child psychiatrist who was with me last time too, and he came back for more. But Dr. Zishan, this time we're really going to test your patience because my guest list includes 2 teenage girls. Yes, you got that right. So we're going to be talking about different issues that teenagers face while growing up in this society. Both of these very well accomplished girls. These are, by the way, ninth grader. There's one ninth grader and there's one 11th grader. These 2 girls belong to Pakistani Muslim families, have been brought up in this society, and we'll be discussing what issues they've faced, what social pressures they've come across as growing up now as teenagers. So I'm going to introduce them to you first. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Liba. I'm a junior in high school. I live in New Jersey.
All right.
That's all I got.
All right.
Hi, I'm Safa. I am a freshman in high school, and I also live in New Jersey.
And just a disclaimer, I apologize to their parents in advance in case they hear some things that they don't like. But girls, feel free to say, this is your moment. Just run away with it. Okay? All right. So Laiba, you being the older one, we'll start with you. So growing up as a kid, as an elementary school kid, as a middle schooler, did you feel that you had in some way things different than the other kids? You know, did you ever feel restricted in any way by your parents, by your brought up, by anything around you?
Well, I think definitely, right?
Okay.
If you're a brown Muslim in a community compared to like white Americans, there's always that difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think it mostly started when I hit high school, where you kind of start realizing like, oh, these are my friends, they're going out, they're going to a party. If I ask my mom to go to a party, I'm probably gonna get like yelled at, because like, why do you want to go to a party? Or like even things like, oh, if you want to go to a concert, you know, brown parents are very protective. And when it comes to these sort of things, it's like, they think that if they let you out of this little nest, it's going to be bad. But in reality, you just want to go to a concert like all your friends and be allowed what they're being allowed to do.
So you feel like your parents have been a little more protective and
100%.
have tried to keep you in a shell.
Yeah.
And what do you think, Safa? Does that stand true for you too?
That sounds exactly like what I've been going through lately. Like sometimes I want to hang out with my friends. A majority of my friends are Muslim, but the ones who are non-Muslim, my parents will be like, why are you hanging out with them? Why not hang out with your Muslim friends? But I want to hang out with my non-Muslim friends sometimes. But it's just different because like the places I want to go, they're like, oh, are certain people there? What are they doing? Like, what time will you be home? Are you out past Maghrib?
So you feel
That's
like
a big one.
past Maghrib? Oh
Yeah,
my
God.
God. Even I can relate to that. And, you know, I grew up in Pakistan. My dad was always like, you cannot stay past Maghrib. Outside past Maghrib. So it's the same for you guys, huh? Interesting. So just getting you involved in this now, is that a common complaint that you see amongst children that you see? And does that really affect their behavior, their growth?
I think it's definitely plays some role in their behavior. But I think what really affect is the understanding the perspective. Like parents have different perspective, and definitely they have some concerns, they have some fear, and the teenagers, the high school especially, I mean, they have, they want to have some fun, they want to explore. So both, I feel the challenge that happen is that how they communicate to each other. You know, what I have seen teenagers are communicating to the parents with a mindset that they are not going to get it. So, and most of the time it's coming out of anger, out of frustration, not out of respect.
Okay.
And what parents, their concern is that if they can help me, and the reason they're asking these questions, who you hang out with, is not that they don't trust them, is that it's their own satisfaction to make sure, because what most of the parents, especially who grew up in Pakistan, but they have seen, this is something new for them. So this is a big adjustment.
Okay.
And what I have seen, as a teenager, they are having difficulty. Why parents are asking this question, and parents are having difficulty. I'm just asking some normal questions. Why I'm getting so much reluctance? So even if they want to let them go, but I think that's where the friction starts, and it usually starts when they both are in a not in a happy mood. Usually,
Okay.
teenagers are telling at the last minute, but maybe they have a really hard day. They are busy. So much things are going on.
Okay.
And sometime what I have seen that actually cause the problem, not what they want to do.
Okay. So you think a better approach might get you better results? Is that what you're suggesting?
So one thing is, I feel as a parent, we are very outcome driven people.
Okay.
For example, for teenagers, the result should be they need to allow me to go. And while many times, the how you start in the beginning is building the relationship.
Okay.
For example, you brought up with your parent that I want to go to this concert, and if they say no, and you have explained in a very respectful way, even if they say no, and you don't get, again, you will get upset, but if you don't become disrespectful, that will lead them to a change a little bit.
Okay.
That I was telling them something to do, which they really wanted to do, but they were very respectful.
Okay.
And they were open to change. So what I'm trying to say is, so don't focus too much, that I have to go.
Okay.
In the beginning, just share your thoughts in a more, because in Pakistan, the one thing that parents value the most is the respect. And the moment they start seeing that, you're trying to convey that, and you're not so much focused on you have to go,
Okay.
things may change.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate over here and take their side. Do you think that if the parents are so strict, or they're just laying down the law, does that lead to behavior where they might decide to hide things from their parents or try to go behind their back to achieve what they want to do? Should there be a little more flexibility from parents? Because I feel like we have to. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that we have to give them some leeway, because we understand that the social pressures or the peer pressures that they're facing are very different from what kids in Pakistan are facing, because they're So is that something that needs to be looked into or addressed?
As far as the lying, I think unfortunately most of our South Asian parents, one thing that they are teaching our kids to lie and to be not honest. And one thing, which is causing, because of that mindset, is that our kids are not authentic. Because what they want to do, whenever they bring up that concern, they are being yelled at.
Yes, exactly. That's what my point was.
Yes, and the other thing I'm also saying is, when these our teenagers, when they go into the job, because their authenticity have been suppressed in a very tough way, they struggle to advocate for themselves in the job. So that's just a bigger perspective I just want to share. So let's go back to the point that what parents can do, because the reason, what I'm trying to say is that the reason the parents are doing all those things is not that they are bad parents.
Of course not.
It's not that they don't want to help their children and teenagers to grow academically or socially. Those are not the reason. It's just that where they grew up, these things are new.
Yeah.
And our teenagers are not giving them enough time and respect.
All right. So you guys have to cut them some slack. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
All right. So coming back, I'm just going to shift gears and pin that question to you. Do you think that kind of behavior, or have you seen it? I know you guys are probably perfect kids, but have you seen it among other people in similar situations, like your other Muslim friends, who may have gone or have been inclined to or have discussed maybe going behind their parents' back to do what they wanted to do, but their parents have like laid down the law and they're like, no, this is not happening, and they've really wanted to do that?
Well, honestly, like last week, me and my friends were gonna go do something, and I asked my mom, and I told her the truth, and I was like, oh, I want to go do this, and she's like, okay, you can go do this. And I told my friend, she's like, yeah, I didn't tell my mom that. I told her I was going somewhere else with just you. And honestly, I didn't understand why she had to lie, because I don't lie to my parents very often, especially about where I'm going, because for one, like, I'm too afraid of getting caught, and for my safety, I want them to know where I am.
Where you are, yeah.
So, like, she lied to her parents, and I was like, oh wow, that's new, because I've never had to.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was driving at. So, you know, definitely it's very important for parents to have an open, good relationship with them. So kids are coming back to you and telling you things that you may not want to hear, but you do want to hear. So, you know, you're there for them if in case they run into trouble. What about you? What do you think? Have you seen something similar or been in similar situations?
100%. I mean, most of my friend group is Muslim, so a lot of them come from families where, you know, the hijab is very prominent, so it's very important for their families that their girls wear hijabs. And, you know, I feel like everyone has their own journey to God and their own social journey, obviously.
Yes.
And one thing I've definitely seen is when parents are like, you have to do this, you have to wear the hijab. I mean, I see people coming to school that were like niqabi when they come here, and then they go in the bathroom and they're, you know, whatever they change or whatever they need to do, which nothing against them. Again, everyone has their own journey,
of course,
to finding themselves, finding where they lie in their religion and socially what they want to look like. But it was just the fact that they have to come to school and then change in a bathroom and like take their hijab off and hide that from their parents because they're so scared of how they're going to react if they tell them like, I don't want to be hijabi, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to dress like, I don't want to be a niqabi, you know?
Yeah.
Things like that, definitely. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disagree with you, Zishan, about the part that you said a lot of times, like, it's at a bad time. Like, personally, I'd be choosing the best time to go and ask my mom for something.
That's what I would think, right?
I, like, pass an exam, and then I text, I just passed my exam. Oh, by the way, can I go out this weekend? You know? And then, I mean, I get lucky sometimes, and she says yes, but sometimes when it's like, you know, the protectiveness kicks in, and that's absolutely understandable. But I think for parents, it's like when you're honest with them, they might not react well, right? About where you're going, who you're going with, and that definitely does lead to like the next time. If when they say no the first time, the next time you're like, okay, let me twist the story up a little bit, you know? But it's, and then that obviously like doesn't build trust. That just leads to more and more and more lies. So that is something I think a lot of brown kids, even like Arab kids, struggle with, like Muslim kids in general. Right?
Okay.
That was my perspective.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly why you're here.
Yeah.
Because we want to hear it from the horse's mouth. Because, you know, as parents, we can say all we want to because in our head we're doing the right thing, but it may not be the right thing or may not appear as the right thing to you guys. One other thing that, you know, I want to move on to is, since we just have girls here today, I want to know, I know you're an only child, so you may or may not be able to answer this, but do you feel that parents, your parents, especially you, Safa, or parents in general of brown families, Muslim families, treat girls differently than boys, or boys have a little more leeway than girls?
I think for my household, it's very put on that women have to do certain things and men do certain things. Growing up, my brothers have been put into like multiple sports, so they've always been out of the house. So while I was growing up, my dad was like, oh, you have to do the dishes, you have to clean the kitchen, you have to learn how to cook. And my sister's a great cook, and I'm gonna say I'm an awful cook. I can't cook anything without burning anything. But I'm learning, and I'm like, like I'll build on it. My dad's like, how are you ever gonna be a wife? And I'm like, my husband can cook. And like, no man's gonna want to marry you if you can't cook.
Oh my God.
It's a stereotype in my house that women do certain things and men do certain thing. And my brothers have like learned that that's true, and they start, whenever my dad tells them, oh, you have to clean, like, why can't Safa do it? Why can't Afia do it? They learn that they're supposed to clean because we're women. They're supposed to do the cleaning. We're supposed to just make the money. That was what was like taught in our house for a long
So we
time.
still have, at least if not all, pockets where there are gender-defined roles, right? How about you? I know you don't have a brother,
Yeah.
but what about, looking at people around you?
Personally, my family has never made me feel like I have to, do the dishes, cook, or clean. Education is really big for them, and, obviously, like, do what you need to do. But I think when it comes to certain social things, for Muslim families, there's always going to be a difference on what a man can do and what a woman can do. Looking at my friends' families, like, their brothers will be out till, like, 2, 3 a.m., their parents will be like, oh, nice, like, hope you had a nice night, come on in. And versus, like, her, if she comes past home by, like, 8, I mean, she's in a bad, situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was...
So we do feel, both of you, to a certain extent, that there is
more trust for guys.
more
than
trust for guys, or more freedom
Yeah.
for guys as opposed to girls, and girls are kind of,
Put
kept
it
under,
up.
on a tighter
like-
leash,
like-
as opposed for
they
one
would
of
say,
a
like,
better
it's
word.
protected,
yes,
right?
they're
Yeah.
more protective of their girls. Now coming to you, do you see that? Is that a pattern that you have seen? And I'm sure you deal with a lot of teenage girls and boys. And does that really affect the girls? Does that affect their growth as a person? Because obviously this is a much more emancipated society as opposed to, if they were growing up in Pakistan or even in some Arab countries.
No, I think it's definitely, especially when you are seeing things are, even with the same household, things are being different for boys versus girls. I think you feel being unfair, and there is likely chance that you will try to receive that importance outside the family. Social media, friends, doing things, that are, again, maybe behind the back, but I think being felt important and being felt recognized is a very basic human quality. So I think as a parent who need to understand, okay, so yes, as a parent you grew up in a different culture, but now things are different. And okay, maybe you may are asking Safa to to clean the dishes, but also allow her but also have son also do the same thing.
Yeah.
Not that this is, I think one thing happen is when the roles are just towards one gender.
Yeah.
If they're asking the boys to do, then it doesn't feel unfair. And there are other ways to have our the teenage girls being validated. There are other ways to make them feel that they are as important or even more important in many ways. So yes, you as a parent, you may have some cultural background, but there are other ways. So as a parent, we need to be more creative. And the reason I think I discussed about the timing. Many times I agree, that we may text them, when we are in a good time, but we don't know what parents are going through, because this is a huge cultural change, way more than the kids. They are also going through, and sometimes they are under a lot of stress. So what I would say is, give some enough time, or have some plan. Like for example, instead of on Friday telling that you have to have some kind of that discussion maybe early on, give them some time, understand them. And one thing which I may request, which is hard request from our teenagers, yes, their parents may not be able to hear them or agree with them in the beginning, but if you start twisting, then you are missing that opportunity
Of
to
building
twist
that
them. So you are
yeah.
twisting yourself. But I think it's definitely what I feel, there's a huge role of our teenage students, because their parents are doing the best what they think. They are new to the system, they're not going to the school, they are honestly unfamiliar with what is the peer pressure is.
Okay.
So, but if you, basically you're losing hope on them. They are not going to change, let me change. But if you are losing hope, then no one can help them.
Okay. Safa, I hope after this video your parents still remain my friends. All right. So, one more question. So, if there was, what is the thing, one thing that you can think of that you always argue with your parents about, your dad, your mom, one thing that, that just is a bone of contention always, no matter what you do or say? You want to go first?
Yes. Recently, this one really just came to me. Very recently, I've been asking my parents more and more to hang out with my friends, and they've actually been saying yes a lot. And then at the very last minute, they'll be like, "Oh, we have something, so you can't go." They'll never consider my thing. They'll just be like, "Oh, my thing's more important, so you have to come." On Friday, I was supposed to go to one of my friends' houses. And they're like, "Oh, we have something at the masjid. It'll be really short though. You can go to your friends after."
Yeah.
And it was 3 hours long, and I was like, "Oh."
So okay, that's interesting. Just to follow up on that, do you think that's a tactic where they don't want to upset you by refusing outright, but they come up with an excuse in a roundabout way to still not make you go?
That's my mother's tactic. I'm gonna say that. She hates confrontation, so I know this is something she might do. My dad, on the other hand, he would be straight up. He would be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't want you to go." And I'd agree with him, because if he doesn't want me to go, then maybe there's a reason. But I don't like when I'm just told at very last minute that I can't go without a reason or without being considered, my feelings being considered, or what I was doing being considered important.
Okay. What about you? One thing that you always argue about, or
Just one.
or
I'm
you
kidding.
can go on.
I'm kidding.
Start with the most important one.
No, yeah, I think I'm not something similar where it's just not being able to go out as often I would like, but that was kind of an old problem. I feel like there was a point where me and my mom were very disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I would hide a lot of things from her, but as you start kind of telling them hey, this is what's going on in my life, you see them open up to you more too. And when they open up, you open up, and now I feel like we're at a really good point where she knows what's going on in my life, and she's considerate about it. And if she says no, then I understand where she's coming from. But regardless, that argument is always there. Hey, I want to do this. No, you can't. For example, September, I wanted to go to a Harry Styles concert.
Oh, okay.
My mom was like, "No, it's too crowded. There's too many people. It's unsafe." I was just like, okay. But no, other than that, nothing much.
Okay. So actually, it's a good thing. That's exactly why I'm having this conversation. What you said while you were complaining was that conversations have helped. Opening up has
100%,
helped,
yeah.
right? So, actually, this is validation of what you were saying, that, in the beginning, they may not understand you. They may not understand where you're coming from. But as things go along, obviously they're your parents and they want the best for you. There's no doubting that aspect of things, right? So, but you may not be seeing eye to eye when you start having these conversations, because obviously it's a learning curve for them too. So, but as you move along, you start opening up to them, you keep going at it, but then you start having conversations about it, and then they start to see your perspective too. Obviously, as parents, we have to draw a line somewhere. Yeah. Not everything is a go. It's never going to be, because at the end of the day, we are watching out for you. But having those conversations, persistent conversations, obviously helped. And you are a good example for that, where you said, in the beginning, you were at a point where you were even hiding things from her. But now, you're having these open conversations. She's probably saying yes to a lot of things. And then when she says no to something, you understand that she has a reason, and that's why she's doing it. So yeah, that's we actually came to a perfect conclusion. You were talking about that, and then she validated that.
Yeah, I think our parents also try to portray that they are perfect. Okay. And many times they don't realize it. If they are saying that they are perfect, then the kids also present to them as perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if as a parent you start sharing, you don't have to share so much personal thing.
Right.
But for example, some Laiba came to the mom, I want to go to this, and she said you don't want to go, and she got upset and they both got disconnected. But later on, mom realized it was not as bad as it could be,
Right.
and that having that conversation from the mom, or from Laiba, or from any teenager mom, I can see, because there is no words. Usually the words that come out of from the student is you don't get it, you don't realize it.
Yeah.
So they become defensive as
Right.
well. But if as a teenager, let me if we can say it, and again, I am adding a lot of responsibility on teenagers.
Yeah.
And I mean, they may say that, they are parents, not we are their
Yeah,
parents.
no, and they're
But,
right.
but one thing I can tell, that our parents are struggling.
Yeah.
And at their jobs, at their social, and just like you are being kind of felt different in your school, they are also feeling different in their job role. So they are under stress, but there is very hard time for them to see the value of going to this concert. So we have to help them, not
Understand.
force them. So what I'm trying to say is that if we can tell Papa, I can see you are having difficulty sending me, but I can reassure you. I can see you have these concerns, because I feel as a parent, you know your child the best, and as a child, you know your parent the best. You know what are their hot buttons, but you also know what they are coming from.
Right.
So if we come from that angle, I can see why you are worried about. I can see, and parents should not bring up all the bad stories that they have heard in their life, but also come, I can see why you want to go. I think we can bridge that gap.
No, yeah, agreed. I think you brought up a really good point where it's like parents have to connect too. I think they have to take the step and like, for example, a really big connecting point for me and my mom was like her sharing things about her childhood with me, like her college stories or like high
Yes.
school stories.
Correct.
Because it humanizes them.
Yes.
Correct.
And then you're like, oh wait, like you actually do
Yeah.
know like what I'm thinking and like, what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when you start a conversation,
Yeah, you're right. We as parents should realize that we are not perfect, obviously, and we don't have to present that perfect picture to you guys too. We have to show our vulnerabilities to you too,
Correct.
100%.
because like you said, that humanizes you, us, and that builds a stronger relationship, because nobody's perfect, and once we accept that, makes conversations a lot easier. So moving on, how have your parents, or parents in general of brown Muslim kids, do you think handle difficult conversations? Like recently, there have been a lot of propagation of gender fluidity. There's been LGBTQ and all that, and that's not something that we as parents dealt with growing up as children. And again, also not something that we're really familiar with. And we ourselves are having, it's our own struggle too, dealing with it, recognizing it, accepting it, dealing with it socially in our jobs, in every aspect of our life, to be honest, at this point. How have your parents ever had any conversations with you? Do you feel like other parents are having conversations, and has it been an idea that has been easier for you to be accepting of in the light of what your parents have spoken to you about?
Well, I started having these conversations like a couple months ago with my parents. First individually, sometimes like together as a family. First, I think they have to start off by telling us why certain things are the way they are, why certain things can be wrong, why certain things are right. Sometimes they teach you just to hate or just to not be okay with things, but they need to tell you why. I found that was really important, and my dad was really helpful when it came to that. He was telling me, he was showing me hadiths and telling me stories of why this wasn't okay. But with my mom, it was more, she just tells me, you can't be friends with these people, you can't talk to these people, you can't talk about these things, but she never tells me why. And sometimes it's hard to like accept that, because they don't give you reasoning, they just tell you, you can't do this, and that's something I can't deal with. So I like to know why I can't do things before I don't do them.
Absolutely, yes. What about you?
Honestly, that topic has never like been something that my mom has like shied away from.
Okay.
I mean, she I feel like we have the same perspective on it, to be honest. We've never really had a problem, like, on where we stand. Like, when it comes to friends that are LGBTQ plus whatever, she's never been like, oh, don't hang out with these people. In fact, when it's like, she'll be like, yeah, all right, whatever, like, that's their choice. She's quite accepting of it. But other than that, like, we've never really had to tackle any sort of problem or had to have, like, a really important conversation about it. I've always known where, like, religion and everything, where my standpoint is on those sort of things. So.
And how socially accepting you
yeah,
have to
like,
be.
I have to be, like, obviously I would never be rude or anything or unaccepting of those people, but, you know, I have my religious views and they have theirs, and that's fine. Yeah.
So now your perspective on, I'm sure parents have come to you with these questions, kids have come to you with these questions, and what is your response to how it can be dealt with?
I think what they both have mentioned, one thing is religious perspective of it. And but it doesn't mean that if parents are bringing those issues, or if the teenager or the children are bringing those issues, mean anyone is questioning anyone's religion. The reason the teenagers or the children they are bringing, because they are hearing those things. And if as a parent we stop them, we give them lecture, this is not right, we cannot talk, then they will go around and try to find out. So what I would suggest to the parent, you know, and again, these conversations are happening more and more. What I would suggest as a parent, you know, always remind yourself, the more you stay calm, again, it's very hard, I mean, to stay calm in those situations. The more you stay calm, the better you are able to help your child. The second thing is validate their feeling. Tell them you seem confused, you seem frustrated, you want to learn more. And then ask them what you have heard, where you have learned, do you have any friends, what do you think? So what the brain science is showing, you know, when we connect and understands and then come up with some suggestion, there is more likely both sides to understand each other. I think what is happening is, you know, it's usually the lecture, this is right, this is wrong, and not explanation of why. And the other thing, you know, you may think today I am adding a lot of responsibility on teenagers. There is a reason, especially in our Pakistani culture, moms now are not as so-called confident or bold or clear in their rationality, because
I'm going to take offense to that, by the way.
No, I just get you know the.
No, I'm just kidding. Yes.
The reason I said them many times, you know, who get the same thing, that the dad has been very sportive, but mom has been usually. And the reason what I want to try to say that this is as a teenager, don't take, you know, don't take the side of the dad and just keep, because mom may not have that all the great opportunities that dad because of the job, because of all those things. So it's not that she is not understanding, it's not that she is rigid, it's not that she doesn't want you to have fun. Is that with her exposure, that's where she's coming from. So
and since I'm a mom, so I'm just going to add a little bit to that. Moms are a little more protective of their kids than dads. And like he said, dads are a little more worldly, so they're able to take things more calmly. They'd be like, oh, it's okay, the kids are old enough, they can take care of themselves, they can watch out for themselves. But mom has that protective instinct that is mostly in hyperdrive or in overdrive, and it kicks in as soon as, you know, they sense some fear or threat to their kids. They're like, and then that can make them maybe a little less rational too. And they could be like, okay, they lay down the law. They're like, okay, this is it. It's not happening. And to kids, it may not seem rational, but it's coming from a good place. Just in defense of moms.
And if I may add one comment and one tip for our teenagers, you know, how they can have make sense of it. First, you know, understanding this, that it's coming more as a protection and it's coming more mom exposure, so it build empathy for the mother. So that's one thing. The second thing which I would like to say is that even, you know, if mom is saying something that doesn't make sense, don't argue, especially if you know that dad has more leader,
Clout,
more
yeah.
clout, and then talk to dad. That mom was saying, I didn't like. Is it okay if you talk to mom? So go with that route rather than
Okay.
arguing with the mom. Because one thing in my clinical practice, one thing is very common. I can tell not only in South Asian but East Asian is challenges between a mom and a child.
Okay.
Both as a teenager and as a teenager girl or boys. Most of the time, even the dad. I would say every day, one thing that is common and the same reason, and most of the time, again, there are exceptions, the moms, they may not have as much exposure and they more protective, but they are arguing. So what I would say, have some empathy, talk to the dad, and then have dad help her or have that conversation more in a open way, but not in a defensive way.
But don't
Go
you
ahead.
think when you're like, oh, don't argue? Like, that's what you usually hear from the dad, like, hey, don't argue with your mom.
Correct.
And it's just like, when it comes to being a teenager, it's like, your mom can be very frustrating at times.
Correct.
And you're just like,
Yes.
and so not arguing, like, I feel like that's what I'm always told, like, hey, don't argue, just do it. Like, hey, don't argue, just listen. And a lot of the times I feel like without the argument, you just get nowhere and you're in a standstill. And then at one point it just builds up. And when it builds up, there's going to come a day where you just blow up.
That's a really good point. So what I'm trying to say is in that moment, if you can hold on to it. When things are maybe next day, so there are a couple of ways. Definitely don't keep inside of it. Ask dad, discuss with your dad. So and say, that's what happened. Because if in that moment you also, things get heat up, it's usually called more disconnection. So what I would say, in that moment, if you can just take a step back, and maybe next day or in the
By the
evening.
way, that's very, very hard to ask of a
It's
teenager.
very hard, very hard. Again, it's definitely hard, but I know they can do it. They're pretty smart. They're very resilient, and when I'm sharing some practical strategies, what I feel they can do it, that they can talk to the dad and have that conversation through that route. Because what I have been seeing is this gap between mom and the children, and the main reason is that argument in that moment.
Okay. All right, kids, I'm going to wrap this up a little bit now, but one last question. So, from my very limited knowledge of parenting and research into it, I came across 4 parenting methods, okay? I'm going to tell you very briefly about them, and then I'm going to make you, if there was one perfect method, which one would it be? Which one would you pick? Which one would you want your parents to be? Okay, so there's 4 of them, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because since you're the expert, there's one that's authoritative, where the parents are just laying down the law. There are no arguments, there are no discussions. It's my way or the highway. Okay, the other one is persuasive, where they're trying to, make arguments or have discussions with you, but even if you don't do it, they're okay with it, right? They're making their points, but they're giving you the choice of following that advice or not. And if you don't, they're not they're not stricken, or they're okay with it. The last one, the third one, actually not the last one, is uninvolved, where whether they don't care what you're doing. You could be you're not home by midnight, your parent doesn't care. You never receive a phone call, you never receive a text. They're totally uninvolved with your lives. The last one is actually the authoritative one, where there are discussions, and they whatever their advice is, they always discuss it with you. They're not laying down the law, but the expectation is that their suggestions or their advice is followed. And they would not like it if it's not. So they're giving you, they're discussing things with you. They're giving you an opportunity to share your opinion with them, with the expectation that whatever they're saying, you will understand and follow. So if you had to pick one parenting method, I'll repeat the names for you. I mean, you may have lost me in those little brief definitions. Authoritative, where you're given the choice, but the expectation is to follow. persuasive, where there's a discussion, but there's no expectation. Uninvolved is very self-explanatory, and then authoritarian is saying, laying down the law. Why don't you go first, Laiba?
Persuasive. I mean, I think every kid would choose persuasive, right? Because at the end, everyone wants to make their own decision. But yeah, I think if you're having the discussion, then your kid's going to be honest with you about where they're at with the conversation, and still do what they want to be able to do without feeling like they have to do a certain.
Okay, but do you think, I'll come to you, Safa, in just a second, but do you think that if you're always given the choice to make the decision, despite, do you think that in your, you are, and you may not be able to answer this because it's probably a difficult question, that you are in the frame of mind where you think you'll always make the right decision because you do not have the experience that your parents have, or you do not have that wide of a perspective that your parents have. So if they are making a convincing enough argument, don't you think that the expectation is correct where you should follow their advice?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a rough question.
Yeah, I said that in the beginning. It's
right.
probably an unfair question to you.
No, you're right. I mean, I'm speaking from my perspective, right? And I'm going to speak from everyone who is my age's perspective.
Definitely, that's why you're here.
Yeah. If you're asking for something, that means you want to do it.
Yes.
And if your parents like, hey, like, probably not a good idea, it's not. It doesn't really get to you almost all the time.
Yes, true.
Where it's like, oh, okay, these could be the consequences for my actions. But I think when it comes to this question, it really does depend on the type of person you are. It depends on the type of kid. Some kids, like, they're understanding. They're like, okay, this is wrong. And I think persuasive does entail that you have that discussion. And if they agree with you, they won't do it. But if they don't agree with you, then they'll do it.
They won't, yeah.
Right? So when it comes to a certain point where it's like, okay, I understand where you're coming from, so like I won't do it. Or if I don't understand where you're coming from, I'm gonna do it. So I think that just ends up coming down to who you are.
Yeah. So maybe it's not like one definitive parenting method. It's probably a combination of maybe somewhere in between persuasive and authoritative. What do you think, Safa?
Well, majority of the situations I'm in, it's either authoritative or they're completely open with whatever I'm doing.
Okay.
And it's either one or the other. I'm never put in a position where they give me a choice to talk or they give me a choice to not do it.
Okay.
So I think persuasive as well, because I want the ability to show them that I want to do this and I want you to know why I'm doing this and where I'm going, and that I'll be fine. And I think having authority is important because you want them to care about you.
Yes.
You want to feel safe, but you also want to feel like a human and that you have choices and you have rights and that that whatever you're doing has some importance in someone else's life.
Right.
So I guess like whatever you're doing always feels important to yourself, but you don't feel that it's important to anyone else unless they show that they care where you're going, that they show that you're allowed to go and that you don't have to put up a fight.
So validation of your opinions is basically what you're saying is extremely important to you, right? And so what you would like your parents, even if they don't always agree with you, they should validate your concerns, your feelings, whatever. Take your opinion into consideration before making any decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to add to that really quickly.
Sure, yeah.
I think with persuasive parenting, you're also giving the child an opportunity to learn how to make decisions, right? Which is always helpful later on in life, where you know what's right, what's wrong, what do I do?
Okay.
Obviously, when you're young, you're not always going to choose the right decision, but when you do choose the wrong decision, your chances are you're going to learn from it. You're gonna grow from it.
Right.
And making those wrong decisions is so incredibly important.
Yeah.
That parents need to allow their kids to make those wrong decisions, so when they're older, they don't keep making them.
Yes, yeah. You learn the best from your mistakes.
Absolutely.
Agreed. And but we just have to make sure that those mistakes are not irrevocable or irreversible.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we're here for. That's what our job is.
Yeah.
So now I'll defer to the expert and see what he has to say about these parenting methods.
I think these are not the only.
No, I'm sure there.
And the other thing I strongly believe that as a parent, you know your child the best.
Of course.
Within the same family, one sibling can be feel more connected with the persuasive style.
Mm-hmm.
Other feel disconnected with the persuasive style.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say is more a conscious parenting,
Mm-hmm.
where you are aware of, what. Okay, so I have, like, as a parent, you first being aware of it, what kind of parenting method you have been raised,
Mm-hmm.
and most likely, even without knowing, you will go with the same method.
Mm-hmm.
But being more aware of it, that those methods may have worked for me. Now I'm a doctor, that have worked. Okay, do the same thing, But if your child is getting disconnected with it, if the child is getting more sad, more angry consistently, then be more willing and open to try something different. So that is one thing. The second thing, because I have give a lot of responsibility for the teenager, so let me put something on the parent as
Oh,
well.
yes, definitely.
Because as a parent, please don't label your child as a dishonest or a liar. On the surface, they may have been seen, lied to you that they are going to this, but they are going somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Try to understand the reasoning behind it, because I think that's the other reason. The teenager, they wanted to go someplace. Because as a as a Pakistani parent, grades are the best example to have. You are telling your parents, you are doing really well, you are submitting the assignment, and by the end of the semester, you realize you missed so many assignments. And by default, I mean, she or he or they were lying to me. But instead of labeling those things, you sit with them. Wow, it must be really frustrating for you. Again, and you have not learned this being growing up, but things exist that are different. So this must be what have happened, rather than labeling them, because I think there are a lot of labels are coming: lazy, liar, dishonest. And that is, again, I have seen in my clinic, teenagers are crying that I am not a liar, I'm not a dishonest. And it was hard. I was trying to tell my mom, especially this Halloween. A couple of parents were saying, "Wow, this person has so many missing assignments. Then why this person is going to the Halloween parties?" And I know they are, struggle with the grades. So what I'm trying to say, have that conversation rather than just labeling or putting, this is the reason why did it happen. I told you not to do this. I told you not to hang with this friend.
Yeah.
So blaming all those things, instead of going to that, be more open, be more connect, be more validate, and be more open to share. Maybe the fear that you have that this child may fail the whole college or school, maybe not as bad as you thought.
All right. Yeah, that's very sound advice for all of us out here. All right, kids. Thank you, ladies, for contributing to this. That was extremely helpful. I'm sure we've raised a lot of questions here, and hopefully have come up with some answers too. And in the process, I'm really hoping that I haven't lost many friends. But I think this was a conversation that needed to be had, and hopefully some good will come out of it. Thank you.